Who is WFZ? The mysterious man who was granted an injunction against the BBC to stop his name being mentioned in a BBC documentary. An article published by The Mirror, dated June 30, 2023 reported that a man with an international public profile who is under investigation for alleged serious sexual offences has won a High Court bid for temporary anonymity ahead of a planned BBC broadcast. In a judgment, Mrs. Justice Collins Rice said the man, who has a high public profile, applied for an interim injunction preventing the broadcaster from identifying him in an investigation it proposed to air into allegations of sexual misconduct made against him by multiple women. The man, known as WFZ, is bringing legal action against the BBC and earlier this month asked for an injunction preventing him from being identified until the full civil trial in his claim. The court in London heard the internationally famous man is under active criminal investigation concerning multiple allegations of sexual offences. Mrs. Justice Collins Rice said, "The relationship between the allegations and the investigation is not simple. The claimant has been arrested but not, yet, charged in relation to 2 allegations. He has been interviewed in relation to a 3rd allegation. A decision appears to have been made not to investigate further a 4th allegation. And further allegations have not, yet, been notified formally to the police. All the allegations are of a similar nature." The man's bid for the injunction was challenged by the BBC. Mrs. Justice Collins Rice said of the broadcaster, "Its evidence is that the proposed reports will state that the BBC has found that at least a quarter of businesses in the sector in which the claimant works have had employees investigated by the police for serious sexual offences, yet despite this the sector does not have any policies or procedures for employees who are accused of violence against women, nor any consistency of approach to allegations. They will explain that the claimant has been investigated by the police and arrested in respect of the allegation, since it is important to explain that his employer knows that this is the position and has taken no action. However, the involvement of the police would not be the focus of the reports." The High Court judge granted the injunction, finding that the proposed publication creates a substantial risk that the ongoing criminal proceedings would be seriously impeded or prejudiced by it. "I am satisfied it creates a substantial risk of impeding or prejudicing the necessary efforts to ensure that all the evidence, and only the evidence, properly forensically relevant to the trial of any criminal charges brought will be available to a jury," she said. Mrs. Justice Collins Rice later said that the criminal justice system has not yet done with him one way or the other. The judge said that the broadcast would be entirely successful in its aim of generating truly enormous publicity. She continued, "The claimant is a nationally and internationally known name. High-wattage celebrity sex scandals never fail to attract and retain attention." Mrs. Justice Collins Rice added, "It would, beyond any doubt, detonate an uncontrolled explosion of personal comment and speculation on the allegations themselves, in both mainstream media and especially online, of which the claimant would be the epicenter and which he would be powerless to stem or withstand. Making him, as he puts it, the poster boy for the issues in the report would inevitably and deeply embed the connection in the public mind." She added, "The BBC has a story which brings a legitimate and serious issue of general public concern to attention. I intervene with great reluctance, and only to the extent that the BBC wishes to illustrate its story by identifying a man currently under arrest." The judge added that the BBC could air the broadcasts and planned written articles without identifying WFZ, or reconsider the issue after decisions on whether to charge the man have been made. The public version of the approved judgment handed down on the 29th of June 2023 contains further details stating that on June 5, 2023, a journalist in the BBC's news investigation team wrote him a right of reply letter about an investigation the BBC had conducted into sexual misconduct allegations against him. It said they had spoken to a number of women who had given detailed accounts of behavior by him, including the commission of serious sexual offenses. It said they intended to identify him in their reporting of this investigation. Although none of the complainants had agreed to be identified in the report, information about dates and places was provided to enable the claimant to identify them. The letter set out the content of the allegations of 4 identifiable complainants, in brief, but explicit, form. It also referenced information provided by friends of the complainants and others. It recorded that the claimant had been arrested in relation to allegations made by 2 of the complainants and interviewed under caution in relation to those of a 3rd, and that police investigations were continuing. The document also states that the order prevents the disclosure of any information or purported information which is likely to identify the claimant as the subject of the allegations of sexual and abusive offending, serious sexual offenses, as having been arrested on suspicion of an abusive offense and as having been interviewed under caution in relation to allegations of a serious sexual offense. Further down the document, it states that police arrested the claimant in 2022 on suspicion of a serious sexual offense following one of the complainant's allegations. They released a statement to the media identifying the offense. The claimant was not identified, but the place of his arrest was. They later released another statement saying he had been further arrested on suspicion of 2 serious sexual offenses alleged to have been committed against a different woman. The claimant was bailed shortly afterwards. The police later confirmed it was taking no further action in relation to one of the alleged offenses. The police subsequently interviewed the claimant under caution in relation to a third complainant, on suspicion of committing a sexual offense the year before. The document also states that no charging decision has yet been taken. The claimant has been bailed until next month. It also states that he has made statements to the police denying the allegations. The decision was made to grant the claimant's application to restrain publication of the information which has been subject to the BBC's undertakings until now, that is, publication of the BBC's report in a form which identifies him or enables him to be identified as the subject of active criminal proceedings. Of particular note, the document also goes on to state, the BBC's editorial choice is therefore either to publish its report now without identifying the claimant, or to await charging decisions, either way, when a fully informed and balanced decision can be taken about the competing interests that might then be engaged. That is a fair and proper choice, and one to which it is rightly constrained by law. An article by The Guardian, dated June 18, 2023 has the headline, BBC drops Panorama inquiry into claims of sexual harassment by MPs. Broadcaster gives no explanation for decision to pull long-planned documentary examining Westminster's handling of allegations. The article continues, a BBC Panorama documentary commissioned to look into the internal handling of claims of widespread sexual harassment inside the Palace of Westminster has been dropped for the foreseeable future, despite months of research. The prestigious investigative programme, which had been due to go out this summer, has now been removed from future broadcast schedules without any public explanation from the BBC. But one of the key contributors, a former parliamentary employee who had waived her anonymity so that she could discuss her experiences on screen in the planned exposé, complained last week on social media of the shock and sorrow she feels at being stymied in an attempt to shed light on the harassment she claims she suffered. A BBC spokesperson said this weekend that the corporation makes no comment on its investigations. The participant says she has been given no satisfactory reason for the cancellation of the documentary. A campaigner on the issue of sexual harassment, she has previously written in the newspaper of her experiences, and of the support she offers fellow victims. The BBC documentary was originally intended as a response to the growing tally of proved or alleged incidents in Westminster, including allegations that David Warburton, the independent MP for Somerton and Frome, had sexually harassed staff. In 2020, Charlie Elphick, who was then the Conservative MP for Dover, was found guilty of sexual assault. And the following year, an employment tribunal found against the former Labour MP for Hartlepool Mike Hill, after he was accused of harassing and victimising an employee in his parliamentary office. We noticed though, that a Panorama documentary was aired by the BBC on July 17, 2023. Titled Westminster's Toxic Culture, the description reads, Parliament is once again under fire over complaints about sexual harassment and bullying, with MPs suspended from their parties and claims of a toxic workplace culture going unchecked. Reporter Noga Munchety speaks to staff members and MPs who give their accounts of sexual harassment and bullying. Exactly 5 years after Parliament set up a new system to deal with complaints, many of those campaigning to clean up the House have lost faith in it, saying it is too slow and complex. So, to conclude, did the BBC encounter a stumbling block but later decide to air the Panorama documentary a month later? The mind boggles. Could the claims of widespread sexual harassment inside the Palace of Westminster have anything to do with WFZ? We have no idea. In other news, we noticed that someone's wife has been quietly removing all traces of her high-profile husband from her Instagram account. Please like and subscribe for more journeys through the blinker hole. For entertainment purposes only.